Hello everyone, and welcome. Yes, my name is Arifai, and welcome back to another episode of Through the Looking Glass. But before we get started, a bit of housekeeping first. So you may have noticed I'm nudging ever closer to 300 subscribers, and not that I necessarily wanted to do a special video on it, but I would fancy doing a Q&A video once again. It is quite good fun to see your questions pop up and I can answer them. And also, now I've got a bit more of an expanded collection, I'm going to do a collection tour. There's some stuff here that you may have seen before on some other YouTubers' channels, but I thought let's do a special video on that. So as it stands, I think I'm 2 shy, sometimes 3 shy. But hey, it's all fine. If you can help me get to 300 subscribers, it would be fantastic. I would love it oh so much, and we'll do a special video to celebrate. What do you say? But today we are going to be looking at the Insecticons. But this is a trio I'm not really fussed on, although they are quite mainstay in the Transformers universe, quite often appearing more often than not. So let's have a look at what these little bugs have to offer for us. It is a bug's life after all. So we'll start off with the Generation 1 cartoon, and with this you see the start of factions within factions. The Insecticons considered themselves Insecticons before they considered themselves Decepticons. The fact that whilst they often did become the cannon fodder for Megatron and would go into battle seemingly needlessly half the time, they would often uprise against Megatron just as much. They were a trio unto themselves. Now I say trio, of course, you have Shrapnel, Kickback and You have Shrapnel, Kickback and Bombshell making up the 3 rather unique designs of Insecticons. Big, gigantic insect bugs, really. But this trio, they had this special ability that, as we didn't really get explained to us, although it has been explained over time, they had this ability to mass produce, and all of a sudden these swarms would appear. This trio would be the figurehead, but their designs would be replicated further back, and you would have armies of Insecticons that the Autobots would literally have to swat away many episodes on the trot. Now, one thing I will say about the Insecticons is, whilst there was 3 of them and they had individual looks and individual personalities, there really wasn't much between them to not chop and change from. You had Shrapnel that was sometimes considered their leader, but then his only individual characteristic would be that he would have this echo to his voice and he would repeat the last word that's said.
Kick back, your meal is escaping.
And then Bombshell comes into it a bit more as this more of a mad scientist, the thinking man's Insecticon, if you like. But in this premise of the cartoon, they were just a trio working together, but not always working for Megatron. They were happy to go into business for themselves. You would see this in other factions as well. You would see the Dinobots often wanting to go off script, if you like, and not always work for the Autobots. So this is the first time you saw dissension in the ranks of the Decepticons. In fact, and quite memorably, there is one episode where Optimus Prime and Megatron infamously have to work together to stop the Insecticons from ruining their plans and ruining the Earth. So the fact that you have the 2 most opposing opposite leaders working together to try and stop 3 bugs just tells you how much of an impact they were when they wanted to be. But beyond that, the Insecticons were, as you really expect, they were cannon fodder. Particularly when they multiplied and became these swarms, they were just there to be shot out of the sky, shot away, or to be easy meat or easy munching for the Dinobots. In the Marvel comics, there is an argument to be made that they were actually a bit more sinister. Now, storylines in the Marvel comics did come across a bit darker than a Generation 1 cartoon, but there was kind of an evil side, a vindictive side that made some of the other Decepticons look quite placid in comparison. But the Insecticons were very much background characters and really no more prominent than the Coneheads were. They seemed to report more under Straxus than even a Megatron, a Scorponok, a Galvatron, or even a Starscream, to the point that there isn't really a climactic ending for them. They are there to be, again, troops on the ground and nothing more. You don't hear so much of their replicating and how these swarms will come on, probably because it's very hard to draw in a comic book, but again, they weren't much of anything other than troops and cannon fodder, really. There was a bit more of a vindictive side. Perhaps Bombshell got a bit more of time on this than, say, in the Generation 1 cartoon, but beside from that, they were there to be troops for the Decepticon cause. And keeping with the comic theme, we'll move straight into IDW, and there was a little bit of a golden spot for the Insecticons, and in particular Bombshell. You actually saw the Insecticons a fair bit more, even this time that they were almost being created to be vindictive troops. You saw this sign of torment and how they wanted to torture and they were made to torture. Really from the All Hail Megatron, the start of that, how Megatron wanted this bloodthirsty, mindless army to really go and do his bidding. There was less opposition to his rule by this point. But it really moves on with Bombshell getting the spotlight in this instance, where Prowl is taken under mind control of Bombshell for quite some time, it has to be said, and we do often believe that Prowl and Megatron are in cahoots together, not really realising that Prowl is really under control of Bombshell all this time, which ultimately makes this new form of Devastator, and Prowl is forced to merge with the rest of the Constructicons against his will under the mind control. This is a very dark turn, and it's not to say IDW wouldn't go dark sometimes, but you saw this kind of willing to mess with people's mind, the fact that the Insecticons were there for torture, and once again the Swarm come back. You would see many famous images of Ironhide just having to deal with this crazed swarm of Insecticons coming towards him on Cybertron. But again, you can't help escape that the Insecticons were there to be cannon fodder. They're there to be smashed and destroyed, because ultimately RC does what RC would do best and destroys Bombshell quite unceremoniously. So all that hard work and mind control of Prowl turned out to be for nothing more than a splitting headache. And really outside of those three continuities, there hasn't been all that much appearances for the Insecticons. They do appear more in the comic side of it than anything else. They've been in the Marvel Comics, they've been in Dreamwaves Publishing, they've been in the first era of IDW and the latest era as well. We are starting to see them come back into toy lines as well. Before that, they were also in the Transformers Devastation video game, again as cannon fodder. You're sensing a theme here. But now that they're coming out with a new toy in Legacy, Kickback's getting his new figure going in there, I dare say we'll see the rest as well. Are we going to see a bit more of a mainstay focus on the Insecticons? Are they going to come into the Rise of the Beast film for any chance? They are there as beasts or insects in some form. Are we going to see them being included? They've been there or thereabouts, despite not having any memorable moments other than being resistant to Megatron's rule more often than not, and a bit of a golden spot in an IDW first era. But aside from that, they do have memorable appearances. They often lead in the destruction of the Insecticons, however. I can't see that changing for some time to come. But there we go, that is the Insecticons through the looking glass. Thanks for watching, and thank you for sticking with me for the subscribers. Hopefully it won't be too much longer till we hit the wonderful 300 mark, and a special video will be on its way. But as always, I will see you on the next one.